on 03456060973 and tell me why I've got it so hopelessly wrong. If, like me, you think her time is up, well, text me on 84850. Maybe you think she'll survive actually past Christmas, Nigel, but once Brexit's done, she'll be gone. And, of course, you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC. You can watch me on Facebook. I'm live here from Brussels, and you can comment there too. And my first caller on this subject is Andy. Andy, will it all be over by Christmas?
I don't even think she's going to make Christmas, Nigel, to be honest with you.
Oh, I was being too optimistic, was I?
You're looking on the bright side for her, I think. But she's totally unsuitable for the job. And I think the best Christmas present she could get would be her P45. Because that woman, look at when she took the job over and look at her now. She was never a stunner, but she looks about 105 now, doesn't she? She looks really terrible, health-wise as well. But
well, I think, I mean, to be honest, Andy, almost anybody that gets the top job, whether it's American presidents or although Trump looks the same as he did, I have to say, but generally we see sort of the Jimmy Carters and the Obamas, and they age terribly, and much the same in British politics. So it is a very, very tough job. But you think in her case the strain looks worse, yeah?
I think in her case the strain's starting to tell on her. And to be truthful with you, why have we got so many Remainers negotiating our exit from the EU?
Yeah, I think it's something like 18 out of 25. Last time I looked, 18 out of 25 in the cabinet voted Remain. I think one of them's changed his opinion. I think Jeremy Hunt now says he would vote Brexit, but the Damien Greens and the others all very much Remain. And of course the recent promotion, Gavin Williamson, who went from being Chief Whip to being Defence Secretary, and he too is a Remainer. So I have to say, Andy, there's an irony in all of this. I mean, for me particularly, having fought against these people for a quarter of a century, having beaten them in the referendum, and now it's the same people still in charge. So it is a bit dispiriting, isn't it?
I actually met you in Romford Marketplace when we were out campaigning for the referendum. I'm a member of UKIP, and we went out every weekend for 4 months. We worked really, really hard. And the one thing that really, really gave me the ump, and I've got to be truthful with you, is the way that the Leave people, Gove and Boris Johnson, pushed you to one side. So when we were at the count and you came out and you was the first one to say this is our Independence Day, yeah, I think you've done the right thing there, mate. You got a little bit of limelight back, because without you, we wouldn't have got it. No.
Well, I mean, the problem was, Andy, the official Leave campaign was merely a Tory party campaign. There was one Labour MP chucked in there for sort of leaven the bread a bit. No, there you are. I'm afraid that the big parties, the big two parties, have dominated politics in this country for a very, very long time, and they haven't done the country much good. And it's why, to be honest with you, I don't just want Brexit. I want a change in the electoral system that breaks up those parties as well. So, Andy, thank you. You reckon she'll be gone sooner than Christmas. Tony in Milton Keynes, what do you reckon, Tony? How secure does the PM look?
Well, you know, Nigel, I'd like to say, first off, I'm a fan of your work, but I don't understand the premise of this question, or rather, I don't understand the value of asking it, because for me, this country is only a two-political party country, and, you know, slamming the Conservative Party, bad as they are, I think they're the lesser of two evils. So, you know, by undermining their credibility further and picking holes in them, I think we're just creating more opportunity for Labour, and that would be a true disaster.
Well, Tony, I'm going to take a completely contrary view to you. I'm going to say this to you. If this woman stays as Prime Minister, completely incapable of holding together a cabinet that clearly, some of them are at war with each other, others are behaving with almost no discipline whatsoever. If she stays as Prime Minister, in charge of this party, I am certain that Corbyn is in with a really good shot of winning the next election. So you could argue, Tony, one of the reasons I think they should get rid of her, they should get somebody who believes in Brexit to head up the party, to head up the country, is actually to stop the Corbyn Marxism from taking over.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, I'm all for that, but I must admit, I'm not convinced that, you know, undermining them and making them, you know, clearly suffer for all their mistakes so publicly is really going to achieve that. I really don't.
Tony, I haven't undermined them. She's undermined herself. That's really the point I'm making.
I agree. You haven't. You're highlighting it. They've done the damage,
Yes.
and I just think it's one of those
Yes.
things that we have to live through and work through, and it's either that or the worse evil, in my opinion. I'm not blaming you for it. I'm saying, hey, by the way, I believe you are the most powerful politician we've had in many years because, you've created change, and it's about, making things happen.
But Tony, do you not accept my point that the longer she stays, the stronger Corbyn gets?
It does seem that way, but as a public, we have a short memory, and if the economy picks up and things look better, I think, the only reason for voting Conservative is the faith we have in how they'll manage the economy and everything that rolls on from that. So I just think it would be a complete disaster for the country if Corbyn gets in, and I hear you.
Well, and Tony, I'm not disagreeing with you, Tony, but I'm saying to you that if they get a strong leader that believes in Brexit and clearly believes in Brexit, actually they could damage Corbyn hugely. Do you know there are 3.5 to 4 million Labour voters out there that voted Brexit, right? In the general election, Corbyn put forward a manifesto in which he said, under a Labour government, we will leave the single market, we will end the free movement of people, and now, 5 months on, he's completely betrayed that. I do not think that Theresa May is going to get those kind of Labour voters to vote for her. I think somebody else could. Let's see. Tony, I thank you for your point of view, and Tony got grave reservations. He's worried that destabilisation, I guess, could lead to a general election. Ollie says to me on text, if Mrs May worked in the corporate world, she would have gone by now. Ridiculous. She is performing this way and nothing is being done about it. Well, I think, to be honest, Ollie, there's plenty of muttering going on, but they haven't yet got the required, I think it's 47 signatures they need to hold a leadership contest. It can't be very far off, in my opinion. It was the Conservative supporting Daily Telegraph who, on their front page today, put some polling out that I think is pretty shocking. It shows that faith in the Prime Minister's ability to get the right deal on Brexit has now plunged from 44% in the summer of this year. It is now 26%, and I feel it's falling very quickly, not just because of the way the negotiations are going, but also because of open cabinet disarray. Graham says to me, I hope she hangs on, Nigel, because the Corbyn-McDonnell alternative is a terrifying prospect. Graham, as I said to a previous caller, if you're of that disposition that you're scared, I mean, some people are very excited about Corbyn perhaps being the next Prime Minister, but if you're concerned about Corbyn being the next Prime Minister, then I think the one big ally that Corbyn has got is Theresa May. The longer she stays there, the stronger Corbyn will be. That's what I think. So far, you all disagree with me. I'm going to go to Charles, who's calling from Dulwich, a first-time caller to this show. Charles, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I'd like to try to put it another way. I think that the next election is Corbyn's to lose. I mean, he's riding high on the polls at the moment. But
Charles, can you speak more directly into the microphone, Charles? You're coming across a bit distorted.
Is that better?
Yeah, marginally. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, my thought is that it's Corbyn's to lose at the moment. He's riding high on the polls. She's in the most terrible trouble. But if she hangs on for another 18 months to 2 years, when things can get better, and they should do, then he's going to have the difficulty of hanging on to his lead. And I think it's the other way around. You say the longer she's there, the more likely it is for Corbyn to win. I take it the other way around. I would say the longer she stays there, the more difficult it is for Corbyn to win because he's so much ahead in the polls at the moment. And as you know, time is the worst enemy when it decides against you.
Well, that's certainly true, and that can happen to either party, of course. Charles, do you think? I mean, do you see in the next 18 months the cabinet coming together, acting with collective responsibility? Boris Johnson not making public mistakes, Priti Patel actually telling the Prime Minister when she's been to meet other heads of state. I mean, do you see some remarkable coming together of this Tory party happening?
I do, save for the point you make about Boris. I think Boris is a very difficult customer, and I don't think he should be there anymore. But I don't see any reason why in the next 18 months to 2 years the cabinet shouldn't coalesce around Theresa May for fear of what could happen when Corbyn and McDonnell take over. And I think that might well be a feeling that goes all the way around the country. And as I say, it is Corbyn's to lose. It's entirely possible that after this terrible time she's having, including, of course, what we heard this morning with all these people behaving badly on tax and this going all the way around the world, that she could actually have a good period obviously the big if, but if she can get something out of the Brexit and make it look reasonable and not too awful, then I think she's got a very good chance of winning the next election, not because she's a brilliant leader, but because she's probably a good manager in the end, and that's what you want. But I still say that the longer she stays, the chance she has of winning, and I think that Corbyn is there to lose. How about that?
I cannot agree with you, Charles. I mean, of course, you could be right on the overall big picture. None of us can predict the future. Who would have thought 7 or 8 months ago that Jeremy Corbyn would be riding as high as he is? So you can never quite predict the future. Obviously, that's right. But Charles, when you say she's a good manager, would a good manager have allowed the months of July and August to be dominated by the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Foreign Secretary disagreeing on a weekly basis in public?
Well, I think you've got to look at the country as a whole. The country as a whole is divided, and you wouldn't expect the cabinet to be anything less. I mean, it would be very odd if the cabinet was entirely united and the country was entirely divided about the main issue, which is Brexit. So, to me,
but there is a thing. There is a thing, Charles, there is a thing called collective responsibility, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I agree with you, but I think that people have had the opportunity to speak.
No, Charles, I'm losing you. You're going all crackly. Charles in Dulwich disagreeing with me very strongly. Another caller disagreeing with me very strongly. He thinks if May sticks in there, this is Corbyn's to lose, and he sees her as a good manager. Sorry, Charles, I don't. By text, you keep on about Theresa May, but never say who should replace her. I don't hear Rees-Mogg saying she should be replaced. Well, of course you won't. Jacob is loyal to the party. He'd never say such a thing. On Twitter, people are now just starting to realise there was never going to be a good Brexit, hence the poll results. Well, whoever sent that, there could be a good Brexit. We need to know what we're trying to achieve. Nigel, you are funny, you know. The 2 ministers you have messed up this week are Brexiteers. If she fired them, you'd be the first to scream, says Dr. Ruff. I haven't messed up anybody. It wasn't me that said the woman serving 5 years in Iran was there training journalists, which surely was red rags to the bull. I didn't do that, and Priti Patel I've got lots of regard for. But you can't just head off and meet foreign heads of state as a cabinet minister without actually telling anybody. And Rob on Facebook says, I think she's in dire straits. She knows it. She's hanging on for all she's worth, to the point of not sacking people. And even Charles from Dulwich, who was a big supporter of hers, he kind of said he thought Boris wasn't helping and that Boris ought to go. Is she going to fire Boris? I don't think so. Ben in Bristol, what do you think, Ben?
Hi, Nigel. Seems like only Sunday we were talking. We're back on again.
I know. So
Nigel,
what?
We're not in so much agreement, I don't think. I think you've got to let it go, Nigel. You've got to let it go. This obsession with taking down Theresa May. It's a fair point. There's nobody decent enough to replace her. Give this woman a break. She is handling a very difficult time in the country's history. She's a very calm, very wise, intelligent woman. People are up in arms because she coughed once or twice at a conference, some letters fell off the wall, and she had to apologise for winning an election. She won that election fair and square, by the way. The media is in total hysteria. They've been in hysteria.
Well, did you listen, Ben?
Saying she couldn't do
Ben,
it.
did you listen to her interview? Did you listen to her interview with Ian Dale a few weeks back?
Which one? What was saying what?
When Ian interviewed her, and he said to her, if the referendum was held now, how would you vote? And she plain blank refused to answer.
Nigel, don't panic, mate. Don't panic. You won the referendum, all right? The Brexit's going to go through, all right? Theresa May.
Is it?
Understand.
Well, it will of a kind.
Okay, look.
It will of a kind, Ben. It will of a kind. But why is she giving us transition periods that will undoubtedly last to the next election? That's not what we voted for, is it?
Nigel, don't panic. It'll get done. Just relax. Don't let the media...
Don't panic.
A calm man like you, a wise man like you, has got to stop panicking. And you're reading too much and you're getting too caught up in the media, Nigel. Just relax.
I think, Ben... I'll tell you what I think, Ben. Ben, if she stays as Prime Minister... whilst we will leave the European Union in name at the end of March 2019. We will, through the transition period that she's proposing, which she says will last for around 2 years, which takes us up to the next election, we will effectively be members of the European Union, just with an even worse deal than we've got now. And then you could get a Corbyn Labour government that keep us in the single market and keep free movement of people and keep the contributions. And that is the great risk to Brexit that Theresa May poses.
Look, Nigel, I kind of understand your concern, but you've got to relax. She'll get the job done. The people have voted, okay? These politicians, they're not stupid. Even the liberal lefties, people like Liz Kendall, people like that, even they don't want to go against the vote of the Brexit. They're frightened of going against that, okay? It's gone through. When she stood in front of the cameras, she said, you voted for the Brexit, I'll do the Brexit. Whether she would have voted for it or not doesn't matter anymore. She says, I'll do what the people want, Nigel. She's going to do what the people want. It's media hysteria that's trying to bring her down.
I don't think, Ben, I don't think...
She's good. She's fine.
I don't think you can turn around... I don't think you can turn around the ship of state and get it pointing 180 degrees in a different direction to where it's been for the last 4 to 5 decades, unless you believe in what you're doing. One last quick question, Ben, for you. Do you think she's the best leader right now of the Conservative Party?
Absolutely. 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 She says this woman is just the right person for this job right now. She's got the calmness, she's got the astuteness, she's got the values, she's a strong Christian woman, and you need that leading the country, by the way. People don't want to hear that, but you do. She's got her head screwed on, and she cares about people enough. But
she's not paying you, Ben, is she?
She's not reading Twitter like, Andrea Leadsom or whatever. She's not reading Twitter every 20 minutes, panicking whether people like her or not. She just quietly gets...
Ben, reassure me. Reassure me you're not on the payroll.
I've already reassured you. I'm just a common sense, straight thinking person, Nigel, like you.
Okay, no, fine. Well, we disagree on Theresa May. I want Brexit to happen. I certainly don't want the Corbyn form of Marxism to take over the country, but I think she may well deliver that. Ben, we agree to disagree. Suzanne says Mrs May not last till Christmas, but will it be a case of better the devil you know than the devil you don't? I wonder what Sam in Worthing makes of that. Sam, good evening.
Oh, hi, Nigel. I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm a businessman myself. I've read so many books. I've never come across anyone who said, I've been successful in a project that I didn't believe in. Theresa May doesn't believe in Brexit. Why is she heading it? I understand she has to be there at the minute because people don't want Corbyn. But she doesn't believe in it. If she sits across Merkel, Merkel's going to think, Brexit talk is a joke. I'm negotiating with someone who doesn't believe in what you're doing. They could push you around. So I totally agree with you. I think the right thing for her to do is probably step down. Get someone who believes in Brexit. Get someone to talk with authority. You know,
Ben, you and I are following exactly the same logic on this. You can't do a job, as big a job as Brexit, of turning the country around unless you believe in it. Sam from Worthing, I thank you. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. Public support in the Prime Minister and her ability to deliver Brexit is collapsing. It is now down to 26%, and that amidst a cabinet in complete open disarray. I do think she'll be gone by Christmas. I could be wrong. Many of you think that I am. But today is also the 7th of November. It's the 100th anniversary of one of the most important political global events in history, and yet no one is really talking about it. You see, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Communist Revolution, Lenin, and all of that. Yeah, okay, we call it the October Revolution, but that's because they were on a different calendar to us that was 13 days behind ours. Later on, they changed and got with us. So actually, November the 7th now is the day that is remembered for when, finally, this form of communism that was to last for decade after decade took control. It is something that Russia, modern-day Russia, is clearly embarrassed about, because there were no great centenary parades taking place today in Moscow. There was a celebration of driving out the Nazi invader, but nothing very much about communism. I think it is worth remembering, 100 years on, that this ideology that was supposed to make the world a better, more perfect, fairer place, finished up killing millions of its own people, enslaving Eastern Europe and spreading its ideology to many other parts of the world. And all that it brought, frankly, was poverty and misery. And I don't want an updated form of hard-line socialist Marxism taking over the country again, which is why I think the longer Theresa May stays, the more likely it is that Corbyn and McDonnell will take over. Now, from time to time, I've been bringing you some business updates, a Brexit business briefing. And here goes for some updated financial news. The FTSE 100 index hit a record high at the close of last week, scaling heights at just over 7,560 points. Even the BBC had to report last week that UK manufacturing growth continues to improve. The Purchasing Managers' Index, prepared by IHS Markit, shows 15 consecutive months of expansion and supports the view of their senior economist that UK manufacturing made an impressive start to the final quarter of 2017. Indeed, industrial production was up 1% in the third quarter, according to ONS estimates. And the United Kingdom has just become China's 8th largest economic partner in the world, according to the CBI. By completing £55 billion of the trade last year with China, we are now second only to Germany in terms of the volume of business that we do amongst EU members. And Silicon Valley has more than doubled its UK investments in tech startups, rising from £342 million in 2016 to £885 million in the first 3 quarters of 2017. And JP Morgan has downgraded the number of staff expected in Paris from 4,000 to just 1,000. And similarly, UBS said its target is to keep as many jobs in London as it can, reducing the number it anticipates in Paris from 1,000 down to a mere 250. And the acceleration of GDP growth from 0.3% in the second quarter to 0.4% in the third. And with unemployment rates now at a 42-year low, we saw the Bank of England returning interest rates to the level they were before the referendum. Ends. There's plenty of good news out there. It isn't all misery. We're doing absolutely fine. And if we sort Brexit out, we'll be doing better still. Sharon in Oxford is a first-time caller to this show. Sharon, am I right or wrong that Theresa May needs to move on, or this government is in real trouble?
I'm afraid I'm going to be another person who has to disagree with you on that.
Yep.
I'm a fan of yours, by the way, and I voted for Brexit.
Yep.
My feeling is that I feel that there's kind of like a insidious campaign by Remainers to try and bring down this government. I continuously hear Labour, John McDonnell, the trade unions and others, they want to bring down this government. And what it is, it's a sort of like a campaign by the Remainers to remove Theresa May from power, okay? And then, even if I don't know who you think should take over from Theresa May, but whoever it is that takes over from Theresa May, then if they have to do an option like a no-deal Brexit or anything like that, the people who oppose that will say, oh, they have no mandate from the public to be the Prime Minister. We need a general election. So then it will force a general election. And then there's a very good chance, as you fear, of Labour winning that election. And then the Remainers will try and force whoever wins that Labour election to then bring in a second referendum and undermine Brexit. So I don't think removing Theresa May is a wise thing. It's impossible for any Prime Minister right now to be popular and bring in Brexit, because half the country almost voted against that. So there's a lot of people out there who wish whoever's Prime Minister right now would be wished a lot of ill will by many people who want to stay in the EU. So she's never going to be popular with the public. She's only going to be popular when we get through this process and you come out the other side, and actually all those good news you just said is happening, continues to happen after Brexit. She'll become very popular then. But
the trouble is, Sharon, yes, the country's divided on this, although, you know, we've had a slew of polls. Between 68 and 70% of people just want the government to get on and deliver Brexit, which is a very big change from where we were at the time of the referendum. But Sharon, her problem is this, that half the people that voted Brexit now have lost confidence in her ability to deliver it. And I would put it to you, that's a pretty serious situation.
Yeah, there's a kind of vicious media campaign going on right now to show anything that's going wrong. Even if you take this sort of MP scandal, this sort of like sleaze scandal that's happening, the focus is on the Tory MPs, who are the sleazy ones. And even though Labour has the most serious problem, actually, of someone having been, raped, that's not focused on. So the focus is on trying to sort of condemn as many Tories as possible, preferably ones who are in the cabinet, so you can try and get some kind of disarray there to show the Tories are in disarray all the time.
Well, they are. But they are, Sharon.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that it's always about trying to because there's a campaign to undermine the Tory government. And actually quite a lot of the language, when they talk about sexual harassment and everything, a lot of the language and media coverage towards Theresa May, the way people speak about her, is very, very sexist. So I think there's two things here. There's an element where there's a woman who's the Prime Minister, and there is unfortunately a difficulty in this country of women being Prime Ministers. I've only noticed it now, since you've had Thatcher and now we've got Theresa May. And when they have to do something that's going to be unpopular with a lot of the public, which in this case is Brexit, that there's a sort of vicious campaign. They're portraying Theresa May as a pathetic, she's such a weak woman who can't do, she's barely standing up, she needs help standing up, she needs a smelling salts to cope. There's a portrayal of her as that. And I find it to be very, very sexist on the one level, but I just think that there's a long-range campaign. All the Tony Blairs, everyone's very quiet right now. They're quiet, and everyone's saying how wonderful Jeremy Corbyn is, even though someone in Labour was raped by somebody, and they're not commenting.
Well, Sharon, let's just be fair. There are accusations made against people in both parties, so this is not just a Labour or Tory problem in any way at all. Sharon, I want to say this to you, and I mean this. I want this Conservative-led government, obviously needs the DUP to help it with numbers, but I want this Conservative-dominated government to deliver the Brexit we voted for. I wouldn't want to do anything that upset that or stop that, but I genuinely believe that the longer she's there, the more Brexit effectively is getting kicked into the long grass with this concept of a transition deal, and the stronger Jeremy Corbyn gets. And Sharon, that's my position.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I just feel, we definitely need, if you can stay until the end of Brexit, definitely, because I think that it's unfortunate with the general election, I wish that more people had voted Tory, who voted Labour. What happened?
But why didn't they? Why didn't they, Sharon?
Unfortunately, I know it sounds a bit mean, but I think a lot of people, in the general election, they wanted Brexit, they voted for in the referendum, and then when Jeremy Corbyn came along and said, I'll pay your student loan, I'll give you £5 extra benefits a week, all these things, they jumped to have £5 more benefits in their bank account at the end of the week.
So you don't think that it was her...
of us governing ourselves? A lot of people...
So you don't think, Sharon, that it was her wooden delivery, her lack of humour, and her lack of empathy? Do you not think that had something to do with why the Tories underperformed the way they did in the election?
The election campaign was a disaster, but you see,
yes,
people like myself who would never vote Tory normally was forced to vote Tory because I want Brexit, okay? But people didn't have the principle of the principle of us as a country governing ourselves was less important to a lot of people than it was to have a £5 extra tax credits or something like that. They voted for the kind of the benefit system and the things that Jeremy Corbyn proposed. A lot of it is never going to be able to happen. It's just the country would buckle to its knees, the amount of money he was going to spend. But they voted for those kind of things instead of actually saying, you know what, we need to govern ourselves. The money we're going to save by not being in the EU, we can use that for ourselves.
Well, and Sharon, now we hear she may be prepared to pay a €60 billion bill for us to leave. Sharon, you believe in her, you voted for her, that's fine. I have to say I've got pretty grave reservations about her. But a lot of you think, it's better the devil you know, or actually she's not doing too badly. Norma takes my view on Facebook and says, "Evening, Nigel, she is way out of her depth. We need someone who believes in our country to take the job." Well, I'm not saying Theresa May doesn't believe in the country, but she clearly doesn't really herself believe in Brexit, and I think that's a huge, huge obstacle to doing this job properly. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. Support for the Prime Minister has fallen to all-time lows in terms of the country's belief that she can get on and deliver a good Brexit deal. I think she needs to go. I think it would save the Conservative Party, and I think it may well, if you get a good Brexit leader of the Tory Party, actually cut Jeremy Corbyn's vote off at the knees. Many of you disagree with me. Some do. Not many shades of grey in this. Nigel, Theresa is stuck in second gear. Time for a change, says Peter in Glasgow. If you want Corbyn in power, if you don't want Corbyn in power, why do you insist May needs to move on? Any change in status quo equals Labour in power. Well, that's the argument that says that if she goes, there has to be a general general election, but I didn't notice one when Gordon Brown took over. I don't think that works personally. Nigel, we must be the laughing stock in Europe. In my 75 years, I've never seen a more shambolic government. And Neil says to me that I'm undermining the government and I'm giving ammunition to Corbyn and co. I don't want Neil to give ammunition to Corbyn and co. Not now that he's completely turned his back on Brexit. I wonder what Louis in Nottingham thinks of this. Louis, good evening.
Nigel, hi. Yeah, well, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it, to be perfectly honest? I mean, I am absolutely for Brexit. There isn't a great deal of what you say that I don't disagree with. I mean, to be honest, I'm in a position where actually I think that if May goes, we're all going to have problems. We're going to be screwed, as is often my phrase.
Because
I think it's possibly Corbyn coming straight back in. I mean, I'm
well, hang on. So, hang on, Louis. I mean, this is important. So, if May goes, that doesn't mean there has to be a general election, does it?
No, I agree with what you just said about Brown as well. When he took over from Blair back in 2000 and whenever it was 10, I think, or before that. Yeah, there wasn't one, was there? But
and when May took over, and when hang on, Louis, when May took over from Cameron, that was after the referendum. There wasn't a general election, was there?
No, there wasn't. No, she was a real fool for calling one, actually. I bet she's annoyed at herself, isn't she, massively? But yeah, I mean, to be honest, you see, the thing is, I just really think it's a ticket for Corbyn, because you know how it is now. She hasn't got a majority yet, and everyone's thinking, well, she hasn't got a majority. What the bloody hell is she doing in there? You know, well, I think that everyone's going to be absolutely, really, really screwed and thinking, you know, she hasn't even got a majority anyway. Why the hell should somebody else take over from her? And you know, why should they be running the country? That's what I think is going to happen.
Because Louis, she's not up to it, and she can't hold her cabinet together.
I do agree with you. And you know, Priti Patel, the situation with her, you know, it's pretty dismal, isn't it? That she can't even sack off her own foreign minister when she does something so appalling as go over to Israel. But I mean, you know, that's just proof. That's just
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with going to Israel, and there's nothing wrong with meeting Benjamin Netanyahu. But actually, if you go as a cabinet minister and a representative of a government, you surely have to tell the boss what you're doing.
Oh, good God, yeah. I mean, geez, if I went to another organisation and my boss didn't give me permission to, God, I'd probably be sacked. The fact that she's still there clearly demonstrates she has no control over her party whatsoever. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there you are. So Louis, you're coming round. So if the alternative was that somebody took over from her who was a genuine believer in Brexit, would you feel happier?
Yes, absolutely. But I'm really worried that everybody, you know, I think we're groomed by the system and by society to believe that there is a such thing as a democracy. Yet we're all sheep. We all follow one another, and that really worries me. And it worries a lot of people that I've been putting that to. And all of these other muppets that vote, members of the public are just dumbasses. They're just muppets because they just follow everybody else. They don't have an opinion of themselves.
Hang on. That sounds like Barry Shearman talking about Leave voters when he represents Huddersfield. Louis, I can see your dilemma, and I think actually, Louis, thank you for the call. I think what Louis is saying is, in many ways, the one reason she's staying on at the moment as Prime Minister. It's this fear in the Tory party of, goodness me, who's going to replace her? How much of a civil war could that leadership election be? But most of all, could it lead to a general election? I don't see that it needs to. My next caller is Steve in Newport. He's a first-time caller to the show. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Nigel. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. My wife and I have been long admirers of your trying to extricate us from the Brussels machine.
Yeah, well, I did my bit, Steve, but it's now Theresa May's turn, and a lot of people are now saying she's not doing a very good job.
I would agree with that. I think she's totally inept, but the problem is that there isn't a viable alternative within the Tory party. There is no one there that one could have any confidence in. David Davis is attempting to do a job in Brussels, but albeit, I think, with his hands tied behind his back.
Mm-hmm. So what if, Steve, David Davis was leader and didn't have his hands tied behind his back?
He might just do a better job. It has to be said, it's a very difficult job to do, but by the same token, one could say that he should say, okay, this is our deal, take it or leave it, and get on with it. The French are well known for doing that sort of thing. I lived in quite a long time.
Yes, and they've done it. They've done it at European summits to get their way on a variety of things over the years. I mean, Steve, do you think Theresa May is a leader?
Far from it. I don't think she has the wherewithal to lead the country. I think she might be quite an adequate sort of politician, but then again, that's no big job, is it? You know, I don't think in terms of leadership, she has got it at all. You know, unfortunately.
So you don't support her, but Steve, you don't support her, but you're worried about her going, yeah?
I most certainly am, because I can't see a viable alternative. I like Rees-Mogg, but he has a persona which I quite like, but I don't think he would appeal to everyone. I think he's a very clever bloke, but I don't think he has the persona to actually lead the country. And I can't see him. And as for Boris, you know, he's just a buffoon, like, you know.
Well, he's not a fool, but he's a very clever man, Steve, but he maybe gets a few things wrong. Steve, thank you for your call. Going to have to let you go. Tom says to me, what is happening in the Parliament at the moment is a direct result of Brexit. Your idea is making your representatives squabble like little children and making your country a laughingstock of the world, yet you still go on like Brexit is a good thing. Tom, Brexit was the political earthquake, but we haven't yet had the aftershocks, and the aftershocks, I think, may well break up the political parties as we know them. At least I hope it does, because they're not serving us terribly well. Hopefully Jeremy Corbyn will be in number 10 implementing socialist policies. Brexit will be abandoned, and that would be the icing on the cake. Well, that's the one thing that I really do want us to avoid, and I think the longer that Theresa May stays there, the more likely it is that that will happen. But many of you don't agree with that. And my final caller, quickly tonight, is Anthony from Chingford. Good evening, Anthony.
Hi, Nigel. Hi, good evening. Big fan of yours.
Good evening.
But I would like to bring up the point that a government in power devotes all of its time to running a country. And now we've got a government in power that also has the enormous job of trying to work out a Brexit deal with Brussels, which for Theresa May is a near full-time job. So not only has she got to run a country, but she's also got to negotiate one of the most important historical deals that England has probably ever had. So to try and judge her when she's got so little time to do both is a very difficult thing to do, because the position she's in...
Sure, but is she up to it?
Ever been in before. So how to say...
I accept that, but do you think she's up to it?
Well, who's up to it? Who can possibly run a country and run such a huge task that Mr. that Cameron walked away from?
Anthony, I'm going to have to let you go. We've come to the end of time. I will answer that by saying someone that believes in it. You cannot do this job unless you believe in it. Brexit is way, way, way too big for that. I may be wrong. She may well limp on as leader, but it seems to me they're very divided. They're not sure where they're going, and support for her is collapsing in the country in terms of people's confidence in her to deliver Brexit, and I'm one of those people too. I've got no confidence. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC.